Could iPhones be gaining ProMotion displays in 2020? Well, definitely not 2019. Let's get that out of the way, people. The iPhone coming out in literally just a couple months has almost been confirmed. Design, specs, form factors, everything. We know almost everything about it, so there isn't much sense in reporting more on that because at this point the phone is basically out. We're just waiting on the Apple event to confirm everything we already know. But this is a particularly interesting topic for me. That's why I wanted to dive into it. So without further ado, let's begin. This leak comes from Ice Universe on Twitter, who recently tweeted that Apple is in talks to use 60 to 120 Hz variable refresh rate displays, the same kind you'd see on the iPad Pro ever since 2017, which for those of you who don't know is not a static refresh rate. It means that when you're watching something or doing something on your iPad that does not require that ProMotion 120 Hz, it automatically switches it down lower to preserve battery life. This is a particularly helpful feature, especially when you want such high resolution displays, but you want battery life to be retained, something the OnePlus 7 Pro hasn't been known to utilize as well as the iPad Pro has. So that's why in the leak he says between 60 to 120 Hz. It basically means when you don't need the 120 Hz, the display will switch that off. But this is a very popular and very in-demand feature a lot of people want in the tech field. Those of us who can tell the difference between 60 and 120 refresh rates are very plentiful here on YouTube, in the tech field, and among gaming communities where they can very, very easily see the difference between refresh rates, me included. I love talking about that kind of stuff. I love using displays and monitors that have refresh rates that go far beyond 60. I have one at my desk that's set to 165 at all times. It's by far one of my most favorite monitors I've ever used. And of course, I love using my iPad Pro with its 120 Hz refresh rate. But as great as that feature sounds and how much I would love to have it in an iPhone, currently there has not been a smartphone that rocks an OLED display and also rocks 120 Hz. As of right now, that hasn't been possible. There have been phones with 120 Hz refresh rates like the Razer phone in the past, but these require LCD displays, which, as you all know, can't quite get the same contrast ratio, can't quite get the same color accuracy or true blacks that we're used to with OLED. And if you recall in the past, we have seen leaks suggesting that by 2020, the entire iPhone lineup, even the budget and R model, which I get it, it's not technically budget, but it's cheaper than the other ones. Budget is a relative term. The point is the cheaper iPhone of the three will even have an OLED display by 2020, which means if this does end up being true, they're going to have to use some type of display technology that is not currently available in smartphones. Apple is definitely not known for being one of the companies to be first to any type of new smartphone technology. Normally, you'll see it on lots of smaller, lesser-known Androids first, and then Apple will try to perfect it, modernize it, and utilize it in the best way possible, and then implement it into their tech. But that's why there is a little bit of credibility to go with this leak, given the recent leaks about the Asus ROG Phone 2. Some of you may have never heard of this smartphone, and that's okay because it is a gaming phone. Gaming phones are not known for selling very well. But in June of last year, Asus introduced the ROG Phone, which did do some interesting things. At the time, it was the first smartphone with a 90 Hz AMOLED display, which hadn't been done before, because typically with OLED displays, it's much more difficult to get those higher refresh rates and then implement it into a smartphone. We get it. There's 120 Hz OLED TVs. You don't have to just remind all of us that they exist, because a TV is manufactured very differently from a smartphone, and Asus was the first company to make that happen. Now we've seen it with the OnePlus 7 Pro. So 90 Hz OLED has been implemented and done several times now. That doesn't guarantee that it's happening on a future iPhone, but it at least showcases that the technology is possible. And until the Asus ROG Phone 2 is unveiled, there still is no phone with 120 Hz AMOLED display, but some pretty reliable sources have leaked the Asus ROG Phone 2's specs. By the way, showing a huge battery pack at 5,800 milliamp hours, a 6.6-inch display, which is bigger than last year's, and a Snapdragon 855 Plus, which is just a little bit faster than the typical Snapdragon 855. The point is, gaming phones are really just to show us what hardware is possible at the time. The fact that it runs the Play Store means that there's not like a ton of games that can really take advantage of these higher refresh rates and actually utilize the hardware present, but it does show you what technology is possible. So given in the upcoming weeks, it's most likely that Asus is going to announce this phone, and it will be a record breaker if you're talking about what smartphone is the most innovative innovative out there, this will definitely be a milestone for the smartphone tech because it'll be the first OLED display with 120 Hz, meaning that perhaps by September of 2020, it could be possible, theoretically, that the next generation iPhones will be shipping with ProMotion. Though, as much as I love high refresh rates, as much as I can see the difference myself, my friend has a Razer phone too, and every time I see it, I am in love with how buttery smooth that screen is. I love my iPad Pro's buttery smooth display. I want it on my iPhone as much as possible. I'm still very much trying to keep my hopes down because this also, despite some of the leaks we're seeing today, is a feature that not the everyday consumer would really notice or care about. Now, granted, it's true, Apple does put a lot of tech into their phones that not a lot of people notice, but oftentimes, especially in today's world, Apple seems to be taking out certain things to save money if they know not that many people are utilizing it, i.e. 3D Touch being the biggest one. Us in the tech field, us techies on YouTube, we all know about 3D Touch, we know what it is, and the majority of us online don't want to see it go. The people who don't are just like, we don't use it, we don't really need 3D Touch too much, especially given after the redesigns to iOS we've seen with iOS 13 and iPadOS, they're making 3D Touch even less useful. The next generation iPhone not having 3D Touch is not going to make me not buy it. I'm still going to upgrade for it, but still, it's sad to see that technology not make it into future generations of iPhones. And the main reason Apple's doing that is they're noticing that not that many people know about it. It's not a heavy used feature. So I kind of feel similarly about using a 120 Hz display in an iPhone. I would love it. I think it's really, really cool, and I definitely want to see it be implemented, but Apple's trying to save money on their phones now, and they're trying to cut out things that most users aren't going to notice. And I've shown my iPad Pros in the past to other people and tried to ask them, hey, do you notice something about this display? Does it feel a little bit different when you're scrolling and swiping? And if it's not a techie person, they're just instantly like, no, it looks fine to me. And then you explain it to them, it's like, this is a 120 Hz display. And if you try to demo that to someone who isn't really into tech or into that type of technical specifications on a device, if they don't know about it, they're just like, oh, okay, I don't care. I'm used to 60 is what I'm used to, except they don't even understand that most of their tech is set to 60 Hz. They just see it as a display that displays their content. So for non-techies out there, I don't think it's going to be an incredibly good selling point to upgrade your phone. Us YouTubers and people who watch our videos like you guys are right now, you'll probably notice it. You'd probably appreciate that and be like, whoa, ProMotion on the iPhone, it's so smooth. And I do think it would probably keep a lot of people fixated on iPhones if the competition doesn't keep up with 120 Hz display, because once you go to 120 and then go back, it feels way laggier, it feels way slower. So if you got accustomed to it on your phone, switching back to a different Android would be very, very difficult if they weren't also rocking 120 Hz display. So this could be a good technical method for Apple to keep people exclusive to the iPhone by giving it some features that are difficult to find elsewhere. But at the same time, I'm still trying to remain reasonably doubtful, partly because Ice Universe doesn't have like a great track record. He's pretty good, very, very good at predicting Samsung and LG and Huawei leaks, but when it comes to Apple stuff, he's not particularly well known for credibility. Not as good as Mark Gurman or as Ming-Chi Kuo has been in the past. Not trying to say Ice Universe is a sketchy reporter, I'm just saying he's not super reliable, but the fact that a ROG Phone 2 is about to drop and that may be the first smartphone with a 120 Hz OLED display means that maybe by September of next year you could see that feature brought, and I really, really hope it is, because I would appreciate it greatly. I know that not everybody would, but maybe it should be a premium model thing, you know, because there's gonna be 3 iPhones in 2020, but given all 3 of them are gonna have OLED now, there's not gonna be the Liquid Retina and then the Super Retinas. Once they switch them all to a Super Retina display, I think the 120 Hz could be a really good selling point for people to spend that extra, but if you don't care about it, you'll still have the 12R or whatever it's called by then. So for the people who aren't that into ProMotion, they'll still have a good display that works just as good as before, but for the people who want their displays to be extra buttery and go above and beyond what the average smartphone display could do, the 2020 iPhones, the premium models that is, will probably be good for that. I will definitely upgrade, and I'd be very, very happy if my iPhone had ProMotion, even if they don't shrink the size of the notch. I know most people probably don't agree with me on that, but if they just leave the notch the same size in 2020, but it happens to be ProMotion, I would be happy with that upgrade because my eyes would be very, very pleased. Also, if the notch shrunk, that would be nice, or they switched to a camera hole or something like that. Anything just slightly different from what we already have had for the past 3 years, I think most people would appreciate, but anywho, I want to know your guys' thoughts on it, so please hit me up over on Twitter or join our Discord. This is your Apple Sheep here, and I will see you guys in the next one.